Hey everybody, Eric here from Action Yu-Gi-Oh! And I have for you guys today my budget code talker list. Now, this is a follow-up to a previous video that I made on the channel where I had a code talker list for $40. This is going to be a little bit more expensive. This is going to be $70, and that's because this is going to be a combo list. Now, the reason it's a little bit more expensive is because there are some specific cards that you need in order to perform some of the combos that are good in this deck, and you can't really replace those cards. That said, there is no card in this deck that is worth more than $10, so overall, it's going to be pretty budget. And we're going to be using TCG Player in order to determine the prices of these cards, and we're going to be going off of the lowest priced version of any particular card. So you may be seeing like a secret rare or something like that, but if there's a common that's worth less, we're going to be using that in order to price out the deck. So let's go ahead and get into the deck profile. So the first card that we're going to be playing here is 3 copies of Lady Debug. Lady Debug is a searcher for the deck. On special or normal, it searches for a level 3 or lower Cyberse, giving you access to very important combo pieces within the deck. Absolutely play 3 of it. Next card we're going to be playing is the most important monster in the deck. 3 copies of Microcoder for $1 a piece. Now this card lets you link summon from hand. You can use this card from hand for a link summon if you have a Cyberse monster on field, but you have to go for a code talker. And if this is used for the link summon of a code talker, you can search for a Signet Speller Trap, which gives you access to a wide variety of very useful cards. Next card that we're going to be playing is 2 Code Generator. This is the same as Microcoder. You can use it from hand for the link summon of a code talker. However, when this is sent to grave for a code talker, you can send a Cyberse monster from your deck to the graveyard. Usually we're going to be sending our next card, which is our Dotscaper. Now Dotscaper is available for $3 a piece, making this one of the more expensive cards in the deck. It is only available as a common, but it is $3. If it's sent to grave or banished once per turn and once per duel, you can bring it back. Normally, you're just going to be sending it off of your code generator and then bringing it back for some immediate advantage. Next card that we're going to be playing is 2 copies of Parallel Xyz. Now, we are not playing 3 copies of this. 2 is fine because it is searchable by several cards in the deck, and you don't really need to see it in your hand because you'll get it in the combo if you don't anyway. This is available 50 cents, so $1 for 2 copies of a card this good is really great. Next card we're going to be playing is 1 copy of Gachiri Attic Nister. This card is absolutely amazing. It's available for $1.25, and you can summon it from hand by negating the effects of I believe it's a Cyberse, a Cyberse monster you control, and if this card is used for a link summon, you can target one of your monsters, or sorry, not a link summon. If this card is sent to the graveyard in general, so if your opponent Nibiru's you can select the token and then make the token unaffected by opponent's card effects until the end of the next turn, which is hilarious. Usually you're going to be selecting your own Firewall Dragon with this card in order to make the Firewall Dragon unaffected by opponent's card effects to solidify your board. Next card we are playing is 1 copy of Scriptron. This is a replacement for one of the more expensive cards in the deck, and to be honest, in a lot of situations, this is better. It's a water monster, which is important for the deck, and you can banish a Cyberse monster from your graveyard in order to special summon it. I just wish it was a little bit of a lower level, but being a higher level means that you can use it with the next card. 1 copy of 4 Mud Skipper. 4 Mud Skipper is available for 40 cents lowest. What this card does, its first effect is pretty irrelevant here, so I'm not even going to talk about it. And second effect, if it's sent to the graveyard for a link summon, you can search for a level 5 or higher Cyberse monster, which gives you access to pretty much all of the cards that we previously mentioned, the higher level ones, Scriptron, Gachiri, and Parallel Xyz. All of those are available just by this card being sent to the grave for a link summon. Next card we are playing is 1 copy of Cyberse Gadget. This is a really spectacular extender in the deck and a pretty good starter. On normal summon, it can bring back a level 2 or lower monster, and if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, it generates you a token, which is also Cyberse. So this card on its own can make a pretty substantial board, but in combos, it's even stronger. Next card we are playing is 1 Cyberse Converter. This is available for 15 cents lowest. Really good card. You can special summon it from your hand if you control a Cyberse monster. Now, this card could easily be replaced with something like a backup secretary, but I prefer this because it's a lower level, which means you can get into a few different cards that we're going to be playing in the extra deck, which makes this, in my opinion, far superior to backup secretary. Next card we're playing is 1 copy of Mathmech Subtraction. This is one of your few ways to really continue playing if your opponent destroys your board after your normal summon and you have nothing left. You can decrease the attack of 1 monster on field, yours or your opponent's, and then you can special summon it and it locks you into Cyberse, but you don't care about the Cyberse lock. All you're playing is Cyberse anyway. Next card we are playing is 1 copy of Sea Archiver, 40 cents lowest. This card is important for your combos. It is water. It and Scriptron are the only waters in your deck which are relevant for a few of the combos in this deck. But this card is really good. You special summon it off of Firewall Dragon in your combo, and then you're able to bring it back later. If a monster is summoned to a zone a link monster points to, you can special summon this card from your hand or graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. So if you summon this off of Firewall Dragon from your hand, and then link it off, you can summon it again from your graveyard, making it a very good combo piece in the deck. Next card we are playing is 1 Link Infraflyer. It's a wind, making it relevant for combos just like Sea Archiver is. The attributes absolutely matter in this deck, but this card can be special summoned from hand to a zone a link monster points to. It's an inherent summon, so just kind of slap it down on board. A spectacular card. 10 cents for that one. Next card we are playing is 1 copy of Mathmech Sigma. This card is a new addition to the deck from my previous builds, and I've actually recently moved it into my main build. This card is absolutely spectacular. It's 50 cents, and what it does is if you have no monster in the extra monster zone, you can summon it from hand or graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field, locks you into Cyberse. You don't care about that. But the important thing is, this is a really good way to continue playing if your opponent wipes your board or stops your normal summon. And importantly, if you discard this, you can just bring it back and continue playing. So it's free advantage if you discard it, and it's spectacular. I absolutely like this card. This card's great. Next card that we're going to be playing is 1 copy of Prohibit Snake. Now, this card is really good in this deck because you're playing a more budget build. You're not playing anything like Impermanence or Droplets or anything like that. So this is one of your few outs to Winda. What this card does is if one of your link monsters battles an opponent's monster, you can discard this card from your hand and bounce that opponent's monster back to their hand. So this on its own with a link monster outs Winda. But on top of that, if this card's in your graveyard and one of your Cyberse monsters destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can banish one other card in the graveyard and then add a Cyberse monster from your graveyard back to your hand. And that can include your Prohibit Snake. So this is a really good kind of budget hand trap to out a lot of really problematic monsters. 2 copies of Link Slayer. This is a 10-cent card. And like some of the other cards I mentioned, this is one of your ways to extend if your opponent wipes your board. You can special summon it from your hand if you control no monsters. It also has another effect where you can discard up to 2 cards to pop up to 2 spells and traps your opponent controls. I would not play more than 2 of this just because it is level 5. I think if this card was lower level, it'd be an absolute staple in this deck. But you can't link it off for any of your link 1s. And it can get a little bit cloggy at higher numbers, in my opinion. So really good card at 2, or even 1, but I wouldn't play more than that. Now the last of our monsters here is going to be 2 Armored Bitrons and 1 Ibli. Now the reason that we're doing this ratio here is because Ibli is a $5 card at cheapest, and Armored Bitron is 10 cents. Armored Bitron in this deck is functionally going to be additional copies of Ibli. You can tribute this card and special summon a Cyberse monster from your deck. So it's Lone Fire Blossom. The reason why you traditionally play 3 copies of Ibli instead of 2 armored Bitrons and an Ibli is simply because Bitron can get hit by some hand traps that can be pretty problematic. Ash Blossom, Impermanence, Effect Veiler, those will all stop this from floating into Ibli. However, in situations where your opponent doesn't have that, this is technically better than normal summoning an Ibli. Because it does also have a grave effect. And if you don't need an Ibli for a specific situation, this can be any of your other Cyber monsters in deck with a grave effect. So this can be your 4 Mud Skipper, this can be your Dot Scaper, this can be all sorts of different cards. So this is a really good budget option to play over 3 copies of Ibli. Okay, so we're on to the spells and traps, and the first spell card that we're going to be running here is 3 copies of Signet Mining. Now this is one of the most expensive cards in your deck. This is $5 a copy, but you absolutely need to run 3 copies of it. It lets you discard a card in order to search for a level 4 or lower Cybers, so this adds the consistency and lets you do your combos more often. This is also searchable with your Microcoder. So this card is absolutely needed at 3 copies. I would not recommend playing this deck if you can't get 3 copies. Next card we're playing is 3 copies of Signet Codec. Now this card is what the whole deck is built around. And surprisingly enough, this is available cheapest at 15 cents. So what this does is every time you summon a Code Talker monster, you can search for a Cybers monster of the same attribute as that Code Talker monster. And it's once per turn per attribute. This is why your attributes matter in this deck. So if you summon a Fire Code Talker, you can search a Fire. You don't actually play a Fire one in this deck though. So you can search every attribute besides Fire. Earth, Light, Water, Wind, and Dark, all available to search. So spectacular card. This is how you do a vast majority of your combos. Next card that we are playing here is 1 copy of Signet Optimization. Now this is available cheapest for $1. Now this card is really important in this deck. What it does is it gives you an additional normal summon. The reason that that matters so much is there are ways to give your opponent Ibli before your 5th summon, even if you don't start out with Ibli, by searching this card. There are even situations where you search this card over Codec just to give your opponent Ibli if you know the matchup and you know that that'll win you the game. This also gives all of your Code Talkers an Armades effect, just meaning that if they battle, your opponent can't activate spells or traps until the end of the damage step. So really spectacular card. Next card that we're going to be playing is 1 copy of Salamangreat Sanctuary. This is available for 10 cents lowest. So this is searchable with one of the Link monsters that you play, but importantly, it has a effect where if a monster you control battles, it reduces the attack of your monster to 0 by paying 1,000, and then you gain the original attack of your monster that battled. The reason that this matters is if you give your opponent Ibli, and your opponent tries to attack you, and a 0 attack point monster attacks a 0 attack point monster as a result of this card, nothing will actually happen. Neither monster is destroyed. So it's a really good way to be sure that your opponent can't just switch their Ibli into attack mode and try and out their own Ibli that way. Next card that we're playing is 1 copy of Monster Reborn, available cheapest $1. This card's really simple, just brings back a monster from either player's graveyard. A really good way to extend. Next up is 1 1-for-1. This is available cheapest for $2. Now, the reason that we play this is because there are a few really good level 1 targets in our deck that we sometimes need in order to play the game and do our combos, specifically Microcoder. So this can just fetch Microcoder right out of your deck. Now the last spell that we're going to be running is 3 copies of Forbidden Chalice. This is available cheapest for 40 cents a copy. Now, this card is a good replacement for something like Infinite Impermanence, and in some situations, this is actually better. So let's say you're going against Tri-Brigade. Tri-Brigade has a trap card that lets them link summon on your turn using monsters in their grave or they're banished, and the monster they normally summon is going to try and banish one of your guys. Well, you can use this in order to negate that. You can also use this to outwin does, or just set it and negate a monster effect on the opponent's turn. This is a really good card, this format, and kind of just a good card in general. The last spell or trap that we're going to be running, and the only trap that we're going to be running, is one copy of Signet Conflict. This is available for $2 cheapest. This is searchable with microcoder. Absolutely absurd counter trap. It negates pretty much anything, banishes the card instead of destroying it, and then your opponent cannot activate cards with the same name until the end of the next turn. I think this is one of the best counter traps they ever printed, to be honest. Okay, so on to the extra deck. The first extra deck monster that we're going to be playing is one copy of a Link Disciple. This is just there for combos. You can use it with a level 4 or lower Cyberse monster. It's available for 15 cents cheapest. And we're playing one copy of Salamangreat Balinx. The reason we're playing this is because this is $4 a copy, making it a lot in a budget build to play multiples. But the first thing I would do in this deck, if you have a little bit extra, is just get rid of the Link Disciple and play an extra Balinx. On summon, Balinx searches your field spell, and then you can also banish it from the graveyard if one of your Salamangreat monsters would be destroyed, like your second Balinx, in order to protect it. But most importantly, with the second Balinx, if you have your Parallel Xyz in hand, you can search out Sanctuary, activate Sanctuary, Balinx into Balinx, and then trigger your Parallel Xyz, making Format Skipper a one-card huge combo. Additionally, having an extra copy of this can come up if you replace one other card in this extra deck, but I'll get to that whenever I get to that. One Talkback Lancer. This card is so good in Code Talkers. It's 25 cents. You need a level 2 or lower to make it, which is why we play our Cyberse Converter over the Backup Secretary. You contribute one monster you control and bring back a Code Talker monster. Next up, we are going to be playing 2 copies of Splash Mage. Splash Mage is 25 cents, and it is one of the best support cards for Cyberse ever printed. It is a level 2 that simply just brings back a Cyberse monster in defense mode. So it can bring back any of your main deck Cyberse monsters, and it's good enough that we're playing 2 copies. There's situations where your board can get broken, or you just can't break through your opponent's board and you need an additional turn, and having a second copy of this comes up a lot. Next up, we are playing one copy of Code Talker and one copy of Inverted Code Talker. Code Talker is $1, Inverted is 20 cents. These are your light and dark Code Talkers respectively. This one, if it is pointing to a monster, your opponent cannot destroy this card by battle or by card effect, and it gains 500. This one is much more important for combos. As far as the effect is concerned, you get to special summon a Cyberse monster from hand to a zone it points to when it is link summoned. And if you have your conflict or your codec on board, what you can do is you can use this in tandem with codec in order to search a light and special summon the light. But do know that you have to have a Cyberse monster in hand to begin with in order to do that combo. Next up, we are playing one copy of Update Jammer. This card is absolutely ridiculous. 25 cents. If this card is used for a link summon, you can make that monster capable of attacking twice, and it's not once per turn to do that. So if you keep bringing this back and keep linking it off, you can get some really ridiculous offensive boards. This is a lot of how you're going to be able to OTK, since we are not playing Access Code Talker. Next up, since we are not playing Access Code Talker, we do have a little bit of extra room, so we are playing our Trigate Wizard. Next card that we are playing is 2 copies of Transcode Talker. Now, Transcode Talker is absolutely stupid. It's super easy to make. It's just 2+ effect monsters, and once per turn it can bring back a Link Cyberse monster to a zone it points to. It doesn't even negate the monster's effects, and on top of that, if it's co-linked, both monsters gain 500 and are untargetable. Absolutely incredible card. I'd argue that as of right now, this is the best Code Talker. Additionally, because we're playing Splash Mage, we can simply just go Splash Mage into Transcode, bring back something, and just continually link climb. Absolutely crazy card. Next up, we are playing one copy of Xcode Talker. Now this is your most expensive card, or it's tied for most expensive. It is $9.50. It recently got bought out from the time of me recording this video, so it's a lot more expensive than it used to be. You need it for combos simply because it is your wind attribute. Additionally, monsters that it points to cannot be destroyed by card effect, and they gain 500. And when it is a link summoned, you get to turn off zones your opponent controls up to the number of monsters in the extra monster zone, but that's only while it's on the field, and that's only when it's link summoned. A lot of times you're going to be linking this off within your combos, so that effect isn't all that relevant, but it is a really spectacular card. You're going to be ending a lot of your boards on this, and just being a wind attribute lets you search for parallel keys, and that is absolutely crazy. Next card that we're going to be playing is one copy of Shooting Code Talker for 50 cents. Now, I would argue that this is probably your worst extra deck Code Talker monster, but it is the water attribute, lets you search, and there are situations where you don't OTK your opponent, where you're not able to break their board, and when you do, this card can be really good for you. It can attack an additional time up to the number of cards that it points to, and then at the end of the battle phase you get to draw cards up to the number of monsters that it destroyed. So it's a really good way to gain advantage if you can't beat your opponent, but that doesn't come up all that often for the most part. We're just playing this because it is a water attribute. Next up, to replace our access code talker, we are playing one copy of Rastaliger. This is 15 cents to play, and if you notice, it has the exact same link markers as our access code. So it can come up a lot. The biggest thing that you're losing out to with access code is the ability to pop and the fact that it is a code talker monster. But this does have a somewhat similar effect where you can target a link monster in your graveyard and have it gain attack equal to the attack of that link monster. Now that said, if you do have the budget, I would replace this for an Avermax. The side pointing arrows are the most important thing for this card, and with the Avermax, if you can't build a really good going first board, you can kind of just pivot to the Avermax, especially if you're playing 2 copies of Baelinks, since you can link a Baelink that you bring back from the graveyard into another Baelinks in order to fit the condition for Avermax. But if you don't want to play Avermax, this is a fine replacement. And our last card is going to be one copy of Fireball Dragon for $9.50, making it the most expensive card tied with Xcode Talker. Fireball Dragon is really crazy. The most important thing that it does for your deck is if you give your opponent Ibly, you always want to bounce back the normal summon that they do in order to ensure that they can't simply link with it. It really solidifies your board, and it makes it to where a lot of times you don't even have to extra link in order to lock your opponent out of special summoning altogether. Thanks for watching the video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you need to contact me directly, you can do so over Discord. Link is in the description.